Hello, listeners of the world. It's the Energy is Love podcast, the podcast for the universe. Thank you, everybody. We've got listeners in over 40 countries now, all across the United States, downloads everywhere. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, go out and share the show. Tell your friends about the show. Tell your family about the show. We like to expand everybody's mind and consciousness with the podcast for the universe. Remember, you can find all of our episodes at energyislovepodcast.com. Stay up to date with what we're doing. Go to our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, all that good stuff. Coming up November 5th, we will be at the Law of Attraction Summit in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's actually held in Sandy, Utah. It'll be November 5th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's free admission. We're going to be there recording an episode of the podcast, chatting it up with everybody there that's going to be speaking, presenting, a lot of the vendors, all that kind of different fun stuff. So that's going to be a fun episode. I'm looking forward to that. You can go to quantumnlp.net. Also, you can find their event page by searching them out on Facebook. Learn all about what's going to be going on at the Law of Attraction Summit. So come out and join us with the podcast for the universe at the Law of Attraction Summit. This episode of the podcast, this beautiful, wonderful episode of the podcast you're about to listen to, is brought to you by Crystal Water Float Spa. Crystal Water Float Spa is our biggest and greatest sponsor. They have been sponsoring the podcast since its inception. We record the majority of our episodes at Crystal Water, actually. We also float at Crystal Water. If you listen to the podcast for any amount of time, you know that we are all about floating and all the amazing benefits that you can get from floating. So if you live out in the area, come hop in a tank out at Crystal Water Float and lay back and relax. You can go online to crystalwaterfloat.com or find their Facebook page, Crystal Water Float Spa. At Crystal Water, you get to float in the most beautiful tanks on the planet, the Dream Pod. Dream-pod.com. Go and find out about the Dream Pod, because if you're into floating, if you're looking to open up a float center, any of those type of things, and you need some tanks, you can now get your tanks directly from Crystal Water Float. They are the nation's only distributor of the Dream Pod, so contact them directly. Get your tank shipped out to you today or tomorrow or next week, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. And then you get to lay back and float and enjoy all the wonderful benefits that floating can bring to you, your customers, your community, all that good stuff. Remember, crystalwaterfloat.com or dream-pod.com. On this episode of the podcast, I got to interview Natasha Koo. Natasha lives in Switzerland, and she is the founder and creator of an online community called Feminine Space. It's femininespace.com. She has a Facebook group connected to femininespace.com. It's called femininetribe.com. She also hosts a podcast called Feminine. I'm going to see if I can pronounce feminine and how many times I can say feminine. Feminine Space Podcast. She was a wonderful guest. She had a lot of insight. Natasha recently came into the realm of spirituality and energy work and all those type of different things. She's an intuitive healer, and she helps women by empowering them to be comfortable living their authentic self. She was a wonderful guest, and we chatted up about some really interesting things and some great topics. So thank you, Natasha, for being on the podcast, and thank you, listeners, for listening to the podcast. Now you get to sit back and relax, push play, plug your headphones in, and enjoy this episode of the podcast for the universe with my wonderful guest, Natasha Koo. Here we go.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Hey, Natasha.
Hi, Craig.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk about anything that's underneath the rainbow.
I apologize. I probably should have, because we just barely, we chatted a little bit before we started recording, but it's Natasha Koo. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Well, that's the English pronunciation, and that's what I stick with too. But it's it's Chinese to begin with, and no one's gonna speak it in the Chinese type of way, so that's perfect.
Well, how do you pronounce it?
Oh, it's all strange. In Mandarin, it would actually be Gao, which sounds nothing like Koo and isn't spelled anything that way. But in Cantonese, it's Go, which is a little bit closer. So I don't even try.
Are you originally from China?
Yeah, I was born in Hong Kong, but I only lived in Asia until I finished grade 1. And then from there I moved to Canada, and now I'm living in Switzerland. So it's hard to say where I'm from, but I was definitely born in Hong Kong.
How long have you lived in Switzerland?
A bit more than 3 years now.
And then what brought you to Switzerland? Like, how did you go from Canada? I mean, that's kind of a big leap to go from Canada to Switzerland.
Yeah, that is. I just gotta say that I came here for love because my husband is Swiss, and we were in a long distance relationships for at least 2 years. And it was getting to that point where all I could imagine was us two Skyping with gray hair, and I just couldn't stand it anymore, and I couldn't see the end. I couldn't really see where it was heading. So at that point, I just thought, okay, someone needs to move, and I thought I would, because I at that time I was studying and finishing up my studies in environment and business, so in sustainability, and I thought, well, with a business degree I can do that anywhere, so I thought I would be the one to move. But then I realized that, it's a little bit more difficult than I imagined with all the language barriers.
Yeah. So your husband's originally from Switzerland?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
How do you like it there?
I gotta say now it's totally my home, and I needed definitely moments to remind me that it definitely feels like home. But when I first arrived, I really had trouble with the language, even though I studied it for some time before just to prepare myself. I didn't realize that locally people speak Swiss German, and that's a really different dialect from standard High German, which you learn in school, and which they speak on the news, or that's how they write in newspapers. But I just came and I ended up understanding no one at all, and I felt all that time I invested in studying German was like a waste of time, because I didn't understand anybody, and no one was willing to speak High German back to me. They would really rather speak English than High German, so I felt quite stuck. But over time, once my language got better, I actually went to Germany to study German for a good semester there. But once I got back and I began to find my own tribe of people, then you really feel that that's where you need to be. So as long as at some point I found people who understood me and people who I could really connect with, then that's more than enough.
Yeah, it's important, I think, regardless of where you live or whatever the case may be, that when you can find that community of people, then obviously it makes things so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about essentially the online community that you've created, that you've kind of founded, the Feminine Space.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about how you kind of got into that, I guess, arena, I suppose is a good word for it.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because I already mentioned that I actually studied environment and business. So my background, or you can say, what I learned to become, is something totally different than what I do now. And it was something quite recent. I know some people are born and they can, really feel energy. They have like a sixth sense naturally, and they're in tune with it. But I was a late bloomer, and it was only last year in January that it clicked for me. And I had an experience where I realized I'm really good with energy, and I'm really good with healing and feeling others and knowing how to pretty much interpret or translate what's going on in them. So whether it's something emotional, something to do, with the heart and what's being felt there, or even something within the body and past injuries, I realized that was my little talent that I didn't connect with before. So all of last year, I was working with people one-on-one in person here, and I didn't really intend to go online with my work. I thought I was going to do that for quite some time, this one-on-one work and healing work and coaching work. I actually called it soul alignment work. But then at the end of last year in December, my husband and I, we were in India for a trip. Our friend was getting married there, so we were planning and just being in India for a good month. But halfway within our trip, I got the news that my dad suddenly passed away, and he wasn't so old, so it was quite a shock. And suddenly I had to fly to Kuala Lumpur, to Malaysia, to deal with what was happening. And it was then that I was suddenly cut off from my work and also from where I was supposed to be. I know this is a little bit long, but how this online community started was when I got this internal kind of intuitive kick or thought in me that said, go find a book about goddesses. And I'm not really into goddesses, or I don't read very much into history or mythology and all that. But this thought just kept on coming. And my intuition kind of works like this. If I have, a certain intuitive feeling, if I ignore it, it keeps bothering me.
Yeah.
So then the next few days, I kept getting this thought, you have to go get a book, go read up on it, and you really want to read up on it. I'm like, okay, sure I do. So I went up onto Amazon, and I was looking up all these books on goddesses, and none of them felt right until I found one of the books, and it is by Tammy Lynn Kent, and it's called The Wild Feminine. And I thought it was really interesting, so I bought it and started reading it, and I had quite a bit of time as I was with family there in Asia. And this book just opened me up to realize a huge part of me that I was completely neglecting, and that was my feminine energy and my feminine power. At that time, I thought, I know what's going on within me. I've done a healing for myself. I get energy. I thought I had a really good grasp on who I am and how things worked. But this book opened me up to like pelvic care and how that space within me is some place that I was really ashamed of, was afraid to go to, just completely ignored. So as I did these exercises, I realized, wow, this is my source of creativity. This is my source of intuition. There's this wise old woman in me, and she resides there. She resides in my root. And before, I was neglecting her. And so through the exercises within the book, at some point, it's as if my heart and my root connected, and I always worked from the heart. Like that's pretty much how my work even happens, is from compassion and from love. So I was already like a really heart-based person, but that was a moment where my heart really connected with my root, like my femininity. And then I got this thought. So suddenly, like someone hit me with a baseball. Okay, that might hurt too much, but maybe a basketball. So it was like boom, and I was like, oh, I want children. I want children with my husband. And once that thought came and this connection came, and my body spoke to me, I was like, oh no. the mind kicked in, and it was like, no, because it's as if, in every single relationship, you have these agreements. You don't sign these contracts, but you talk about things and you agree what you two want to do and what not to do. And having kids was something we both agree that it's something we don't want to do. But in this moment, it's like, yes, that's what I want. In every single thing, imagine like this machine where all the lights are blinking at the same time, like everything was flashing and saying the same thing. And I was like, okay, I guess I gotta tell my husband. So I was in Asia then, and I had to call him up. It was all over Skype or WhatsApp, and there I was, just preparing to tell him this. And half of me was extremely, extremely afraid because I really love him so much, and we have something so beautiful. And I was afraid that when I told him what it is that I wanted, it would not be something that he agreed with, and that it would just ruin the relationship or something significant would change. But I wanted to tell him. And the funniest part is the listeners, if you have a partner who's also very in tune with you, for example, in this case, my husband said to me as I was struggling to tell him what was going on, he said, "Oh, I know what you're going to say, but I think it's important that you say it yourself."
You already knew, huh? You already had that
I know.
sense.
So when your partner understands and connects with you in that way, sometimes you just say, no, you're such a pain right now, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I did tell him. And I guess on some level, he also shifted. Even though we weren't together, he didn't know what I was, really doing or the realizations I had, but he knew and he felt the same. So I got that reassurance that, and he said, me too. So that was a moment where I realized, okay, if this is going to happen, how do I want my life to change? And I realized all my clients were all in Switzerland, and it just, something didn't feel right. So when I went back to Switzerland, I really sat down to draw out and to dream and to put down onto paper, if that's what I want, how do I want my ideal lifestyle to be? And I realized that I no longer want to, just trade my time one-on-one. I want to create something bigger that's scalable, that can reach even more people. And there was another significant event that happened in Switzerland that really just started off this community. It was when I went to a workshop or some networking event with lots of healers, people who studied nutrition, people who were hypnotists or teaching dance and movement for expression, or Chinese medicine practitioners. So all sorts of people. And I was looking around the room, and since I was so submerged in this material about the feminine and womanhood and the power that we have within us, I noticed something to me that was a bit strange and a little bit off. And it was that the women in the room who appeared to be extremely influential and powerful, they were acting like men. They were very forward, kind of focused, executing, and very, very direct, and coming from this place of like this pure masculine energy. While there were women also in the room who were extremely loving, very nurturing, very giving, very feminine. But I didn't feel that they were at all empowered from this. I felt like they were doing it and overgiving, but actually feeling a bit dry, feeling a bit underappreciated and not worthy, even though they're living this feminine energy out. And so I thought, there's this lack of balance here, and I wonder what's going on. So I ended up interviewing more than 40 women about their femininity. What do they want for themselves? And turns out everyone's just going through the same thing. Everyone wants to, feel balanced, feel full, feel happy, get over their fears, get over their internal blocks, stop pleasing other people, and be able to stand up for themselves and say no, and stop feeling guilty, and all these things. And it just was just shared between so many women that I thought, this is it. This is what I gotta do. And it resonated with me so much, and it just, all the little dots just connected from one point to another and until then. And I thought, okay, here we go. I'm off to something and I'm gonna spend a lot of time on it.
So that's amazing, first and foremost. That's a lot of information as well. That's really, really cool. I mean, it's the things that kind of jump out and stand out to me is how you trusted that intuition or that knowingness. And I like the way that you described it, where a lot of times, because I'm similar in the way where you'll get this idea or you'll get this inkling of a thought, and unless you give it focus and attention or listen to it, then it kind of doesn't go away. It just kind of stays there and keeps getting louder and louder and louder until you actually do something about it. But I want to go back a little bit, because you said that, I guess, and this is, I always hate trying to come up with ways to describe these silly kind of notions or things like that, but the beginning of your spiritual journey or your awakening or whatever you want to call it, you said that it's more of a recent thing. Is there something that, like some event or something that happened, or how did you actually kind of come to it and find all of this different stuff?
I gotta say, it moved really slowly at the beginning. Like so slowly that you barely notice it's even happening. I really have to admit that my husband had a huge influence since we met, because he has a hypnosis background and he's really helping people find happiness, find themselves from the inside out. And when I first met him and he was doing his coaching work, I just thought it was so boring. Part of me didn't even understand the part of service, you know, how he was really helping people and changing lives. Like, I was not ready, and it just did not click for me. You know, if I had been ready, I would have been all over it, and, you know, the mind and understanding meditation, and he has a background in martial arts too. So I would have been like, I even tried meditation because of him, and I remember commuting to work and trying to meditate. It was awful. So I definitely, at the beginning, it was something that felt a bit forced, and I was just trying to learn what was there. Mm-hmm. And my intention wasn't even there. So it's as if my environment was already there. I was in this little incubator and I didn't know what was happening and what for. But over time, I gotta say that the more I opened up personally, the more growth or transformation or unfolding was actually available to me. Because I remember it was only, let me see, maybe 4 years ago, when I actually reached out for the first time to someone for help, and it was to a hypnotist or hypnotherapist who I wanted to help me with guilt, because I was really getting bothered by all these guilty emotions and feelings that were panting up inside of me. And that was extremely difficult. Why I'm explaining this is because that was the one big step where my own suffering and what was happening inside was no longer held within me, and I allowed someone in. So in some ways, I allowed light to come in, and that started the growth process, and that led the unfolding to happen.
Well, I think that's an important thing, because I think 9 times out of 10 people get stuck in that in their space of themselves, of not allowing people to help, not allowing that light in, or whatever we want to call it or describe it as. And I think it's so important and necessary.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it never is easy, especially when you're kind of really stuck in it. Exactly,
especially if it's your first time. It feels like you're treading on this territory you've never been, and it's a little bit unstable until you realize and you have that experience and you feel the support from another person, and that you can actually do something about it. So I think that really clicked for me, that help is there, support is there, and that whatever I'm living through, it doesn't have to be that way. That was it. And I really gotta say that life threw me so many curveballs, so many different, you can call them if you want, bad experiences, let's say bad bosses, people who fired me, just all these experiences that push me away from everyday life and push me to do things that were a bit out of my comfort zone. So one was to teach yoga just by donation on the lawn in the summertime after work, because I was so unhappy at work. And that led me to going to a yoga teacher training. So that started to unfold even more things about my body, meditation, and all that. So it was step by step.
Had you been practicing yoga for quite some time, or did that kind of come along?
Since university. Yeah, I'm a really late bloomer. I know I'm actually quite young, but I want to say that I'm a late bloomer because it's only recently in my life has this become my reality, right? At least consciously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen it change your life in that way? Like where you become consciously aware of all of these different aspects of kind of like energy in the universe and the ability to intuitively connect with people and heal certain things and all that kind of different stuff. How have you seen that kind of change your life?
Well, the only way I can answer this is every single way. Definitely. I think the first thing that changes is our relationships, because they are such a strong and vivid mirror for us to reflect back on what is happening within us and how we see things. And so my relationships definitely changed, especially with family, because I find that family is that blessing and also lesson. I'm not sure if this is for every single family, but it's where you can really practice what's happening within you now versus practicing what you learned as a child and all those habits and behaviors and unconscious patterns that we have learned along the way. I really gotta say that now, more than anything, I value other people, and my thoughts have become something that I can just not give it any energy if I wish to, and to know that my thoughts aren't true most of the time. And when I connect with someone, say I connect with you, I feel you and it's a connection. So I'm less bothered by all the mental commentary, the stories, the things that really distract us from what's actually here. So that has been kind of infiltrating into every single aspect of my life.
Yeah. I like how you worded that, where it's more about kind of practicing what's in you as opposed to the behaviors and the programming and all the things that you were kind of brought up and raised in from your life experiences. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you kind of help people come to the realization of and walk them through that process, or is it more just for your own personal benefit, I guess?
It's everything. I really feel that I can only lead the ladies or my clients as far as I'm able to, and that's really significant for me. Especially, I call myself a women's tribe leader, and as a leader, the more vulnerable I am, the more I set the tone and the allowance for others to be themselves and just as vulnerable. So a part of me really wants to share that I don't really heal, I don't fix. At the end of the day, I don't coach. All I do is reflect back at the people who I connect with, what's happening in them. May that be, something that's being held, an energy that's been carried on from, their parents, or maybe it's a trauma from the past, whatever it may be. I reflect back what's happening now. And I also reflect back at what they already know. So a lot of it is an unlearning. I don't like to put on extra tactics, extra tricks, extra methods to remember to do so that, you fix things or you figure out things. A lot of it is to actually break things down and to just take a look at what we have built, the walls or the structures or the patterns or whatever it may be, and to know that that's not us. And from there, it's a form of letting go. So I like to say that everything that we don't fully process, it may be emotions or whatever is happening, if we don't let it come through us like a wave, then we hold on to it. So it's this form of letting go what is not ours and what we no longer want to hold on to. So that's how I like to describe my work, and that's what I'm living every day, is to let go of what's not me. So it's unlearning, is not putting up on extra layers of clothes and makeup and this and that, or masks to puff ourselves up to feel fuller. It's like taking away those extra jackets, those extra weights, those extra backpacks that have hold us back so that we feel ourselves again. Yeah,
I think it's really important. I want to get your thoughts on something. Mm-hmm. So it's a really, when I say it's a common thing or whatever, but I talk to a lot of people on the podcast. And the fact is that all of those experiences that we have, I think, from our life in general, whether it's from our childhood or whatever the case may be, those are the things that a lot of people get stuck in. Like you said, whether it's a traumatic experience or just something from their upbringing or whatever the case may be. And we have to kind of bring awareness to it in order to move out of it. Do you think that there's this is kind of because it's so like it's formulating in my head right now, the whole thought process around this. But first off, do you think that there's rhyme and reason behind everything that happens in the universe?
I do feel there's a reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what would be because I'm sitting here thinking, why is that the design? Like, why is that the process? Because so many people go through that experience. I'm thinking, everybody essentially, it's just in varying degrees of however much pain and suffering or trauma or however much, their life has unfolded the way that it has. But why do you think that's the design? Why do you think that's the way that it is? I don't know if that's does that make sense?
Why kind of the lessons need to be learned? Why the perceived bad things or the whole path needs to be walked?
Yeah. It's kind of like, why? I understand like the difference between, light and dark and having to have some contrast, essentially. If we just lived in this beautiful space of everything was glorious and light and, if we never had difficulty in our life, then we wouldn't really appreciate some of the wonderful things that we get to experience. But it seems to me like there's some, and I apologize because this thought's just kind of, it's something I haven't really even thought about. It just popped in my head as we're sitting here talking and I'm listening to you. But like, what would be the overall reason behind that? Because it seems like it's almost an intricate part of the way that the universe works, that people on this planet, in this life, in this experience as human beings have to go through that dynamic of experiencing what we typically would classify as bad or negative in order to get to a point in life where they can either learn to process it and heal it and move through it, or they don't. It's a weird thought.
No, but it's definitely a loaded question, and a few things come up for me. One of them is, it might not be the ultimate answer of like why does it all happen, but for me, if I look back on my life and I look at what has happened in the past and what I'm doing today, I know that I cannot help women the way I do or help my clients the way I do if I did not experience what I had before, which was, this feeling of not enough, trying to hide behind my mom's shadow and all sorts of things. But I really feel that made me who I am, and because of it, I'm able to connect with others who are in the same place and lift them up beyond that state. So for me, that's a really clear power or empowerment. It's as if that past has imprinted in me this, maybe not secret formula, but this special code where then I'm able to help others who have a similar code or tattoo on them, which is like, hey, I'm suffering, or I don't know why I keep self-sabotaging, or why I have so many thoughts of guilt. Then I'm able to relate to them. And I have a really wonderful friend. She is so lovely, and she's in a completely different place, and she in no way experienced what I had in my past. So when I talk about my work and I say, oh, how does that sound to you? What do you think of my newest program? She'll say things like, I don't relate at all because I've never been through any of that. So to me, that's a sure sign that, okay, since she didn't experience what I did, she can't do the same things I do, like so clearly, because she couldn't really quite relate at all. So for me, that has happened. And maybe this is another twist of an answer to your question, is that, for example, in December, when my dad suddenly passed away, many would call that something that's sad or bad, right?
Yeah, a negative thing.
Yeah, exactly. But I gotta say that as it happened, and I remember myself in the Indian airports on my way commuting to Kuala Lumpur, I remember all these emotions coming up, like just so human. Grief, thoughts of, oh, how dare he leave me? Thoughts like, oh my goodness, I don't have a father anymore. And then sadness, and then grief, and all these waves of emotions coming again and again. And I felt that every time I let these emotions pass without judgment and they kind of flowed through me, I felt peace again. That was such a huge moment for me to realize that I have peace, I have bliss, I have this perfect state within me at all times, even in this moment where perhaps if I was in a different place in my life, it would have been something extremely awful to experience. But for me, it was not just pain. It was just emotions flowing through me, and I was able to feel them. And some parts of me realized that it wasn't a bad thing, and that what was happening was just happening. And so what I kind of see also when you ask this question is kind of like the wind. You're going to be moving about and going to different places, but we have such a strong desire to organize things and place things into good or bad. But what if we imagine that everything that happened is like this wind, and it's sometimes stagnant, sometimes it's moving, sometimes it's a typhoon, and it's always changing. But the wind does not ask or say, hey, I'm a hurricane, how bad I am now, or this is awful. Well, when it's stagnant, it says, oh, yes, now I'm peaceful. So that's kind of what the visual image that came to my mind.
I like that one. I like it a lot. I mean, I think, because I kind of agree with you in the same way that for me personally, I don't believe in good or bad or positive or negative. I think everything just simply is. And at the core of it, I think that it is positive, even though, do you know what I mean? I think that's just a word or a label that we use to describe something, but I don't think that there's evil forces and negative energy and all that kind of stuff. I think everything just simply is, and it's not until we have labeled it in some way, shape, or form. So I like the way you describe it with the wind, that, you know, the wind doesn't, like you said, it doesn't ask, it just is. It just blows and it does what it does, and sometimes it's a hurricane and sometimes it's that soft breeze that just kind of brushes across your cheek.
But I on some level, I feel we're quite blessed to be humans and to have these emotions and to have the ability for language and to classify things a certain way.
Yeah.
But whether we want that to define our life or for that to be the experience, you know, how we see it, that's a completely different topic then.
Yeah, that is a different topic. It is all about how we view it and how we perceive it. But I got another question for you, Natasha.
Yeah.
So if you're just kind of coming into this space and into the realm of spirituality and energy and all these kind of different things, do you have anything right now that you're really interested in, that you've been reading about or researching, or that you're kind of, you know, anything that's popped up into your space recently?
It's not a book or anything, but recently my husband has been really looking into the 3 principles. I don't understand it really well, but he's been digging into it. And at one point, I think he was in the shower when he told me this. He was like, oh, guess what happened in this video? I want to share with you. And he said, it was actually from Jamie Smart. Jamie Smart apparently said that in a call with my husband, that it's not the thought that influences how we feel or impacts us. It's actually how we think. So how we think that thought, how we interact with that thought. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because there's, you know, all this material or content on positive thinking, or change your thoughts and things will be good, or, you know, be aware of your thoughts. And I was thinking, what if it's not, you know, how we feel, the source of what's going on, and our whole experiences don't actually depend on the thoughts and what they say, like, oh, you messed up, or, oh, what's wrong with you, or, you're such a great person, or, haha, you know, like, what if it's not with the content of what the thoughts contain, but it's actually how we react to it. So I give it a little bit, oh dear, I'm going to say thought so many times now. So I gave it a little bit of thought, and I was thinking, okay, so how does that pan out? What does that look like? What does that mean? And I realized, hey, that is true, Because there'll be days when, I mess up or something happens, and maybe I have the same thought today compared to, say, yesterday, right? I think the same thing. Say, oh, I wake up and, oh, I'm tired. Or, oh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and I go, if I think this differently, even though I have this same thought, I experience it differently depending on how I take it, how I receive it, as truth, as something that I can just brush away, it's not real, something that's just passing by in my head. However I interact with that thought, that is actually my experience, not the content, not what the words or the energy is contained within that thought. So that was a pretty big aha moment for me recently, where I realized, oh, okay, we spend all this time thinking, oh, shouldn't think that, gotta be positive, or time to control my thoughts, and all these things. But at the end of the day, maybe it's how we want to approach these thoughts that's even more important. So I kind of wanted to share that with you.
I like that a lot. That's really, really good. Do you do you find a way, like, how do you do it? If you were if you were gonna talk somebody through that process of not just bringing awareness to that aspect of it, but how do you practice that? How do you put that into your everyday life?
Yeah, I really want to keep on sharing a bit because I was quite I guess influenced or inspired by Jamie Smart, who kind of shared this concept with my husband, right? And another thing that I learned, and it really stuck with me, and which helps anyone to fully get this whole topic that we're speaking about, is this concept of quality of mind, right? So you can call it the mood you're in, the state you're in, the state of mind, quality of mind, but it's how you are at the moment. And I really gotta say, it's a very human thing. We're always kind of, we're always changing, and that also applies to our moods. So say that we have ice cream every single day for the next year. I allow you to have ice cream every single day for breakfast now. And the same flavor, the same scoop, in the same bowl with the same spoon, and at the same place. But how we experience this ice cream every single day is going to change. But everything is the same, right? We're the same environment, consuming the same thing, same time of the day. The only thing that's different is how we show up and the mood we're in, and that quality of mind I'm talking about. So if we're in this just bad place, mentally, emotionally, whatever it may be, that's when we want to make huge decisions. That's when things feel so urgent, and you're like, I gotta fix this, something's wrong, let me do something about it. And things feel so urgent and important, and you're in this state of almost survival mode, where you just need to get things together. And that's when we make wrong decisions. That's when we confront our loved ones. That's when things go wrong. Yeah. When we're in this, in this low quality of mind. And I gotta say that it doesn't matter the emotion that we're feeling. It can be, to the sadness of, say, like my father's death, or it can be the happiness of going to, say, Disneyland for the first time in your life. Doesn't matter what emotion you're feeling, happiness or whatever, it impacts it. So you can be feeling happy, but there's still this feeling unsettledness in you. You can feel sadness, and it makes it like 10 times worse. So this quality of mind, if we keep this, at the back of our head, if we have some level of awareness and mindfulness to it, say we realize, oh, I'm in a low quality of mind. It seems like I have this shades on, and everything I see just makes it darker, it makes it more gray. Everything feels a bit awful and off. Then put those internal mental sirens on. Make it go, let it ring, let the sirens go in your head and say, caution, caution, not the time to make life, changing decisions, not time to decide if I want to marry him, Yeah. So I think that's just something that goes on, but, we feel like we have to trust that feeling of, oh, let's fix things, or it's so important now. No, that's completely the quality of mind you're in. And if you're in a low one, then things are gonna shift, And that's when you want to be careful. And that's all you got to do. You don't even have to fight it. You don't have to, give it more energy, or try to pull or push it away, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just let it be there. Have your sirens on. Proceed life with caution. And I promise you, things will be fine.
That's really good advice. So we haven't even touched on yet, but you host a podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing as my website or the community. It's just a feminine space podcast.
And how long have you been doing it?
Since, oh my goodness, has that been maybe around May, June?
Then what made you decide to get into podcasting? Because it's one of those things that, that's when we started our podcast. We started back in May, and it was just the most kind of synchronistic thing of the universe just eventually guiding me to that point where it's you know what, I think I'm going to do a podcast. And then I had to dive in and research and figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with that.
I know.
But did you have any sort of background in broadcasting or anything like that? Or did you just decide one day as well?
Oh, no, I definitely don't have any background in broadcasting. I did sing in choir in high school. I don't think that's anything to do with this, but no. I'm still in an online course community, and that's where they recommended this is a great way to get your message out there. And the more I do it now, the more I realize this is my medium. I feel really good just talking, and I would... If you search me out there, you'll find me doing a lot of interviews on podcasts and on video, and very few guest posts, even though I do have a few, because I spend so much more time formulating and writing than I do just speaking my mind. Somehow that's how I work. And this reminds me of a really funny memory. I don't know if this is, what do you call it in books, foreshadowing?
There you go.
Yeah. When I was very little, I remember I would just talk to myself a lot, and it would be kind of story-like, or I would be pretending something's going on. So I would be chatting and saying this and doing that. I don't even remember what exactly I was playing in my head, but I would be talking. And then I remember one time I was in the bathroom, and I don't know how long I talked to myself for, and then I came out, and my dad was like, "Were you reading a book?" And I just looked at him strange, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "No, Dad, I wasn't reading a book." And I washed my hands, and I was like, wait a second, how long did I talk to myself for on the toilet? So that was my young self, and I think I was back then also blabbling away.
Is it something that you've enjoyed doing so far? The podcasting and everything?
It's been fun. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I feel I don't even imagine who I'm speaking to, but I think that on some level there are so many things that I feel just need to be said, that needs to be out there and in the open. And I feel like I'm so not restricted when I express myself, especially when I speak. And I think that's freeing, not only for myself, but for other people to hear my thoughts, to hear that whatever I'm going through, whatever stories I share of my little self or younger self, it's what other people are going through and resonating with. So I feel like by speaking my mind and by sharing my story, it's going to hit home to someone. And I don't need to try to, make it to be something other than what it is. I think just by sharing what we've been through and our experiences and our stories, that is going to touch someone, and that is going to help or support or transform someone's life out there. Yeah,
I totally agree. For me, I love the fact that I get the opportunity to speak to people like you, and that's the cool thing for me with podcasting is now I've got that kind of an excuse in a sense where I can just reach out and talk to anybody that I could possibly ever want to be interested in talking to.
Yeah.
And then that whole
isn't
thought,
it great?
It is great. And then that idea too, that now somebody, we've got listeners all over the world that get to tune in and listen to these podcasts and to these episodes and learn and gain experience and insight and knowledge. And so that's the beauty behind it for me. I just absolutely love that aspect of it.
It's far reaching.
It is far reaching.
I definitely feel that.
That's one of the cool things about the technology.
I feel extremely lucky for the time that we're in, and how I'm able to reach out to people or strangers at first, but we're able to connect and help each other and support each other no matter the distance. I feel really, really blessed in this way.
Yeah, it's really nice. I'm sure you find that with the feminine space online and everything like that, being able to help people that way. How do you do you have plans for the future and expanding that, or what different avenues are you going to be using?
Yeah, so I can start a little bit with my vision. I really want to create in the very end this online community that's supportive, but almost like the most comprehensive course out there or resource out there for women to heal themselves and to go into the different paths inside, so to reconnect and to heal and to resolve whatever is inside of them. So just imagine modules like path to, say, the mind, understanding the thoughts, path to the heart and emotions, path to the body and why relaxation or breathing might be important, path to maybe lineage or the pelvic space, all these things and different material, exercises and meditations that the woman can individually go through at their own pace and grow. And if they encounter something that they need support with or have questions, then they have that woman, that supportive community where they can reach out. So I really want to create this like huge resource, but also this community. I think that support is needed between women, but until I build it up to that capacity, right now I'm working with people one-on-one and also with group coaching. So I'm pretty much attracting my tribe through service, through healing, through transformations, one person at a time. I know the journey might be a long one, or I never know. It could be, going up like a rocket. I can never tell. But that's how I'm kind of taking it one step at a time for now, helping and coaching women in sisterhood, creating that one step at a time, while my ultimate vision is to create this amazing community and course, and for it to be available to so many women that in the end they can form their own physical sisterhood in their town, in their state, wherever they may be. So then they don't or they aren't relying on me for the content or the sisterhood or that community. They find a woman in their space physically to also gather and create their own support system. So that's what I envision. It's huge, and just talking about it, I'm thinking, why does that take 5 minutes to explain? But I guess that's the frame, or that's the how big my vision is.
That's a beautiful vision. I mean, I like it because it's inspiring women, like you said, to reach out within their own physical space, not just online necessarily, but find it locally where they can connect and have that connection with people in the real sense. I think the universe out there online, that's a real sense as well now, especially in today's world. Like you said, it's kind of a big vision and it's kind of grand in a sense, but I think it's totally doable. I mean,
At some point at the very beginning of this year, I was really thinking that, okay, I want to launch this soon. Let me get the people in, let me get the traffic in, let me find my tribe. And I realized that's not the way. And I was so clear on my vision, and sometimes this happens to, business owners or entrepreneurs, and the visionaries, they see it so clearly that you almost forget the steps you gotta take to get there. So I've reconnected back to service, to, okay, if that's my ultimate vision, what are the stepping stones to get there? And I've really come to terms that it has to come from service, even if it's just one woman at a time, one call at a time, that's still going to take me there. So that's where I'm at now. And I'm a Capricorn, so I'm ready to climb up that mountain and be like, where is it? Am I at the top yet? But I'm learning too.
Well, thank you so much, Natasha. It's been super wonderful being able to chat with you.
Thank you so much.
I know it's kind of late there in Switzerland, so I appreciate you staying up and being on the podcast and everything like that.
I hope I can, every time I connect with someone, I get really excited, and especially the topics that we covered, it makes me just want to keep going at it. But I know maybe I should have a chamomile tea now.
Yeah.
Get ready for bed.
What's the easiest way for people to get a hold of you and find all your information and all your stuff?
Sure. If you want to check out the podcast or all the free resources I have, then that's at femininespace.com. But if you want to hang out in the free Facebook community I have, then that's femininetribe.com. And either way, you can always reach me by tagging me or finding me at the contact page. And I have lots going on, like a free 21-day self-love journey. So if anything I said sounds like something that you're going through, then just don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm there. I'm here.
Well, beautiful. Thank you so much. And we'll obviously have links to that and all the show notes and everything like that. And I really appreciate it. You were very, very wonderful, great guest and all that good stuff. And I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. And now everybody gets to go out and have a beautiful, wonderful day. Or in your case, go to sleep, drink some chamomile tea and get some rest.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you.
This internal kind of intuitive kick or thought. On some level, I feel we're quite blessed to be humans. However I interact with that thought, that is actually my experience. Our relationships, because they are such a strong and vivid mirror for us to reflect back on what is happening within us and how we see things.